Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the ribbon cutting of the Harold Neumann display. I'm very sorry that the weather didn't cooperate. We had a 10 by 30 tent for outside, and we had kiosks that were going to be set up in the gardens. Yesterday would have been beautiful, but unfortunately, it's today and it rained. So I know you're kind of closed in together. Follow the COVID protocols, whatever they are right now, I'm not quite sure. But there's hand sanitizer, there's masks if you need a mask or want a mask. By every door. We do have a restroom, and it is over, if you see the Geneseo coverlet, it's right to the left of that. So you're welcome to use that as well. I'm going to start off today with a lot of thank yous because we couldn't have done this without everybody's help. I'd like to thank Bob Johnson and Bob Johnson's construction company. It was a real treat to watch them hang this plane up here with 3 ladders and 4 men, so it was kind of interesting. Others are, we had Bob Erdman and Don Freeman also helped, moving all the cases from one floor to the other, from the museum into the carriage house as well. We have Boy Scouts helping, Key Club helping. Sharon and Landon Newman's daughters helped yesterday carrying things because we were going to serve the rolls out under the pergola, and they were in the kitchen, so we had to move them out here as well. So we've been busy, gotten our exercise. Ben Page, I'd like to thank him as well. He's from the EAA in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and he brought many of the artifacts that you see from their museum. And then Jamie Ree, we have to thank her because she and her husband and little girl picked up from the University of Illinois Chicago campus the Eiffel Tower that's in the case. Don't anybody panic. We're going to turn the case around and it will fit perfectly fine. And Jamie and I talked about it, so we're A-okay with it. I'd like to also thank Sharon and Paula Chapa. Sharon Neumann, they're all related, and they have done a multitude of work getting this all set up, and also Les and Carolyn Stroll, because she baked all kinds of these rolls that you're eating today. And Les, I put him to work going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth yesterday, and I really do appreciate that. John and Fred, thank you too, and for the board members that have come in and helped, thank you, thank you. And all of this put together, we're going to have a nice dedication today. I want to introduce the boards, and you may stand up or raise your hand, whichever you want. I will start with the Harold Neumann project directors. Our chairperson is Paula Chapa, and she's really, I think I'm gutsy. That girl is really gutsy. She's contacted people I would never probably contact. John and Elizabeth Neumann. John's my troublemaker. And Landon and Sharon Neumann. They are. And Sheila and Fred Majorkirk. And then the museum board of directors, our director, Jennifer Bourne. And our president, Gail Ryan. She's not with us today. Vice President, Maury Atwell. They have a brand new baby, so he's in Raleigh. Secretary, Mary Harris. Treasurer, Jim Lukart. Our board of directors are Faith DeDecker. Keith Kennett, over there. Elaine Humphreys. Bonnie Johnson. Carol Frankie. I left us to last, Wes. It's Wes is on the board, and I'm also on the board, so I couldn't do it without all those board members. Next, I would just like to welcome all our distinguished guests here today. I'm only laughing because Carl should be on Saturday Night Live. That's Elliot. And he's such a comedian, so I'm looking forward to his speech. And so we're really happy that all of our guests are here today, and they are distinguished. I'll tell you a little bit more about Jamie when her turn comes up. And she graduated from Geneseo, and so she has some honors coming up as well. I'm going to turn it over to Paula Chapa, and she has some things to talk about.
We switched on you. So Sandra's going to go next.
Oh,
I was supposed to go last.
Yeah.
Sandra, this is Sandra Pobance. I call her Sandy because I've known her my whole life. I slept in her bassinet. My mother did not know she was having twins. And so her bassinet that is on the display at the museum, I made a joke to my mother and said, can you believe Sandy Pobance is old enough to have something in the museum? And she said, Angie, don't laugh too hard. You slept in it too. Sandy?
I didn't know I was going first. I think first is the hardest, right? My father, Wilbur Pobance, they lived in town here for almost 34 years. His mother and Harold's mother were sisters. And they grew up, Theodore Pobance was my grandfather. This display here is in honor of my ancestors in their work in the hog business in Illinois in the 20s and 30s. But anyway, Harold and my dad were very, very close friends. They were almost like brothers. And so Dad would tell stories, which now I treasure, about flying with Harold. And I'm not going to read this, but I am going to try to look at it. Well, let me say this first. I'll digress. I became very close to Ann Neumann, which was Harold's daughter. And she and her husband lived in Lincoln, California. And I met her probably in 2000, when Dad was still living in his home. And we just hit it off. We were like second cousins. So I would go visit her regularly in California, and especially after I moved to Arizona 11 years ago. So one time I was visiting her and her husband, and they got out this manuscript, very hard to read, and said this was an interview with Harold that was done in the 1940s by Ann's school principal. And they said nothing's ever been done with it because he died unexpectedly. So this manuscript there was only 1 or 2 copies. His wife was very uneasy about anything being done with this because he was no longer alive. So this is back in about 2011. I said, well, this is how I'm part German, and you know how they are, all those of you that are German. I said, well, I don't want to let this die. Can I borrow it and try to put it on my computer? So that's what I did, and it was very difficult. Some of it I had to use a magnifying glass because the copy was so poor. 2 pages I never did understand. Well, Cliff Pobance was my uncle, my dad's brother. Neil was his son. And Neil was in aviation. And I'm going to embarrass my other cousin. Chad, will you stand up, please? Okay. This is Chad, Neil's son. He's also a relative of Harold, way down the line. And he tells me not to say this because it's wrong, so I won't say it wrong. He's one of the pilots for Caterpillar and flies the jet all over the world. So that, I'm not saying Harold caused this, but I think Neil got into aviation partly because of Harold's legacy. And now I'm so proud. I know he gets red in the face, and he probably wouldn't have come today if he knew I was going to do this. But you know what? You never know down the line what influence people are going to have on other people. So I worked on this book, and I would get to airfields that Harold flew into. And they don't exist anymore, so I'd Google them. I'd Google anything I didn't recognize, and if I couldn't figure it out, I'd call Neil. Neil passed away about 7 years ago. He was running the airport down in Lakin, is that correct? Yeah. What's the name of that airport? The what? Marshall County Airport. He used to be in charge of the air wing at the Arsenal. So I'd call Neil up because he was an expert on engines, and I'd say, Neil, what does this mean? I don't understand it. I don't know how to spell it. So he would know right off the top of his head. He didn't even have to research it. But on the landing fields, some are still there with a sign that says what they were. Others maybe aren't even there anymore, but I think I got them accurate. So it was a labor of love, and because Dad flew with Harold, not as a pilot, but as a passenger, and watched Harold progress through this from childhood on, it meant a lot. So the family, I'm going to give you the whole story here. The family was very concerned about being sued by their family if they published this. So I may end up in jail, but if I do, somebody can just bring me a razor blade or something. I don't know. But I showed this to my cousin from Utah, who's not related to this, on Sunday, who came to visit me, who helped me move to Arizona. And his son's going into aviation in Utah. And he said, Sandra, why is this not printed so people can read it? I told him why. And he said, how many years has this been? I said, 81. Well, 81 years. And if you don't print it for profit, only for historical purposes, I have made the conscious decision. We're not going to have it on Amazon. We're not going to print it at a professional printer and go through copyrights and all that. But I have given Paula permission to take my zip disk, because there's only about 12 copies in existence out here, and print this with a new disclaimer in the front that I have written, that it is to be used only for the Harold Neumann Project, for the 501c3. And they will have control of the printing. I still have control of the book. The family gave me control of the book. It is not to be copied, and it is not to be sold for profit, just for the historical purposes. And Angie has told me, or Paula has, one of the two, there's aeronautical history buffs out there that are referring to this on engines. I mean, I had no idea when I did this how important this was, and there's a copy someplace where Harold made notes along the side on the original, which I didn't even know existed. So this book is going to be printed, and the Harold Neumann Project will control how much they want to charge for it. It's not to make money, it's for historical purposes. But I do want to share with you a couple stories, and then I'll get off of here. I think my 15 minutes are already up. Dad told a couple stories, and Harold mentions Dad and my grandfather in the book. Dad talked about flying with Harold in the early days, selling tickets at races, and driving Ernst Neumann, Harold's father, to races. So Dad would drive him all over to Ohio, Indiana, wherever Harold was racing. It was, I'll never forget Dad saying this, it was raining lightly, and Dad had the windshield wipers on. Ernst said, Wilbur, please turn those wipers off. You are going to wear me them out. I think that's cute. Another time, Dad was riding with Harold, and it was so rough. Dad started throwing up over the side of the ship right as they flew over the dome of Notre Dame. Dad was sure there was still some left on the dome. When they landed, Harold took a look at the side of his plane and said, Wilbur, you did it, you clean it up. And of course, Dad taking Harold and Leland Major to Wichita, Kansas, to get the travel air. Dad driving back, and Fred, this is making fun of your dad. Leland was supposed to ride back with Dad. It was Harold's car. But Leland decided he'd get back quicker if he rode with Harold. So Dad drove back alone, and he couldn't get over the Kansas City Bridge because Harold's car would not go into low. So I heard this story 1,000 times. He backed down, turned around, backed over the bridge in reverse in order to get over that bridge. But that's not the end of the story. He beat them home because they had bad weather and had to put the travel air down. So I also want to thank Carolyn Pobance, Neil's wife, who helped edit this book as well. And I'll read you the last paragraph. It is my sincere desire that the record of pioneer aviation and the sacrifices that were made, both in tireless work and lives lost, And Harold's life motto, never, never give up. No matter how tough things get or the impossible odds that you're facing, will be an inspiration to all who read it. As my dad used to say, in those days, no matter what your occupation, giving up was not an option. No matter how bad things looked, you just tried harder and hoped for a better day. And that was Harold. Never, 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 never give up. So I hope if you're interested, that at some point here you can get a copy of this book, and you will find, even if you're not into aviation, it's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next we have Paula Chapa, and I will say one of the highlights of my career at the museum was 3 times it was tried to get Harold Neumann into the Illinois Aviation Hall of Fame. He's in New York, Kansas, Ohio, has a display at the Smithsonian, but he was not in the Aviation Hall of Fame in Illinois. So in 2018, we were able to get him into the Illinois Aviation Hall of Fame. There's pictures of us, and Fred and I are accepting the plaque, and you can see the short and the tall of it. And there's a picture of me there giving the presentation, and you can't see me because the podium's too high. So on that, I would like to introduce Paula Chapa, and she has some things to share with you.
Sorry, I took the notes. I could read this to you, but I'm just going to make it short and sweet. This has been a labor of love. I thought it was going to be just a little bitty thing. Yeah, I'll help you out, and we'll put some pictures in a scrapbook, and we'll maybe, go up to Oshkosh once or twice. But this has turned into a wonderful, wonderful program or project. It has brought, I've learned a lot about aviation. Not that I wanted to, but now I can't get enough. It's outstanding. Pilots from all over the world have interacted with us either on Facebook or in emails, texting. It's been crazy how many people knew Harold either through their parents and knew what he did and are so happy about what's going on here in Geneseo. And with that, we have commissioned, the model is with Sheila McGee, or McGee Wygand, yeah, and it's wonderful. This is what the program is doing, the project is working on. We're also, everything you see in these cases, we've either had brought in, shipped. We have been all over eBay, and people find out about us online, and then they're offering their things to us. There's so much more to do. We're very thankful that you're here today, and that you will give us the backing that we need as far as to move forward and keep going. So my dad and Fred started this, and at first I thought like I said, it was going to be something small, but thank you, because this has really turned into something wonderful, and wonderful for Geneseo. So thank you for coming.
Our next speaker is Doug Rosendahl, and he brought his Mr. Mulligan. It's out at the airport, is that correct? Okay, you can go next.
Well, I was supposed to be flying over top here today, but the weather didn't cooperate. So, I've been flying for about 40-some years, and I live up in northern Iowa, and I'm a warbird guy. I fly World War II airplanes in air shows, and I started flying freight in the DC-3 about 35 years ago. But I've been involved in warbirds, and along the way, I got to know a guy named Jim Yonkin. And Jim was an aviation genius, and he worked over in Cedar Rapids at Collins Radio after World War II, and did a lot of things in aviation as a pioneer in his own right. And in 1980, late 70s, he took it upon himself to build a replica of Mr. Mulligan. he was inspired by the Golden Age racers, and he built this airplane. And I knew Jim, and I knew his son and grandson, and flew in air shows with them. And as Jim got older, Jim really didn't fly much anymore, and I started flying Mr. Mulligan for Jim. And when he passed away here a couple of years ago, his family made it pretty clear that I was going to end up with Mr. Mulligan, so I bought it. And so as a result of that, I've come to learn about the story of Mr. Mulligan in the Golden Age and the role that this airplane played. And I just, I've flown a lot of pre-war airplanes, and most pre-war airplanes are, kind of snaky and nasty to fly. And this is a glorious flying airplane. And to think that the racers of the day were, radical little bitty airplanes with ridiculously small wings and horribly unreliable engines. And, these guys put together an airplane that basically is a modern airplane in 1935 and flies like a modern airplane. That was one of the fastest airplanes in the world at that time. And, it was the never give up spirit, I'm sure, that drove that. But it's been a real pleasure to, I bought the airplane. I've been flying it for, 8 or 9 years, but I bought it last summer. So I haven't been able to get it out on the road, but we had it over in Peru yesterday, and it's just a huge hit at the air show. For me, flying warbirds and flying this airplane, airplanes are a tool we use to tell a story. And they're incredibly exciting, and they evoke an emotional response in people that makes them effective. And so, my job as the custodian of this airplane is to take it out and carry those stories. And there are incredible lessons in all these airplanes about, how to overcome obstacles and do the impossible. I mean, aviation is the epitome of the accomplishment of the impossible. And this airplane, I mean, as I'm somewhat of a student of aviation history, and this airplane is a game changer in the history of aviation. And so being able to be the custodian of that story for a short period of time is a great honor and a privilege for me. So great to be here. The airplane's out at the airport. I hope it'd be nice if we got to fly it, but that runway's kind of short, and if it's wet, I don't want to put it off the end in the ditch. So I don't want to be that guy. I'm the custodian of it.
Yeah, Harold Neumann event.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, but it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all.
Last night, I had the privilege of talking with Elliot and Carl, and they're really quite the team when they're together. And Elliot came from San Diego, California, and he is now I hope I get it right, medical transport pilot. Good. Wow. I got it okay. And he is I found out last night, he's probably one of the most influential people on Howard. So we welcome him here to tell us about how Harold knew Benny Howard and their relationship.
I don't know how influential I am, but I am a board member of the Howard Aircraft Foundation. And to just harken back to Sandra's comments earlier, she doesn't know this, but I actually saw that book, that manuscript, about 6 years ago when I went to visit Harold's son in California. And he informed me that it was never going to be released, and I was very sad about that because the information inside was really critical to history and preserving history. So I was asked to come here today to explain the relationship between Benny Howard, Harold Neumann, and the airplanes that they flew and created together. My journey into Howard racing started about 5 or 6 years ago when Carl and I got in contact with each other. And at that time I was in college in Seattle, devoting as much of my spare time as possible into Howard airplanes. And my ex-girlfriend didn't really appreciate that very much. But that's just how it went. And we quickly bonded over our mutual desires for historical accuracy on his racer restorations. And this bond has kept us heavily invested in the restoration of Ike, which is one of the racers that Harold flew. If you see some of the photos on display here today, you can tell that the National Air Race events were expansive and large with amazing crowd attendance and media coverage. This was a time when the general public was excited about airplanes and the future of air travel. These race pilots and their machines were faster than anything else on Earth, and few of them had formal education. They just had a good feeling of what looked flyable and what looked right in an airplane. They had an unmatched work ethic, and they were willing to put everything in their life on the line for the pride of winning and race earnings, which meant very much to people like Harold Neumann and Benny Howard, who came from very humble beginnings. It's generally accepted that the fame afforded by Harold's winning touch in the 1935 National Air Races afforded Benny Howard the fame and credibility to jumpstart the production of his commercial aircraft designs, which were derivative designs of Mr. Mulligan that Doug was just talking about. So between 1936 and 44, about 600 airplanes were created by the Howard Aircraft Company, and today there are about 50 or 60 of those in existence and still flying, with more that are in kind of the project state. And that's a big testament to their fantastic design and capability, even as modern airplanes today. All that design and capability traces directly back to the National Air Races and what Benny and Harold were able to do with Mr. Mulligan and Mike and Ike. And it's because of extraordinary people like the remaining Neumann family that we as the Howard Aircraft Foundation are able to support these currently flying aircraft. It's a family that's proud of Harold and keen to share primary source information and accurately curate history so that it can be passed to another generation of pilots and operators of Howard's airplanes. The members of the Howard Aircraft Foundation are grateful for their work, and Carl and I are personally grateful to them for all their efforts towards the Ike restoration, which he'll talk about right now. So we're going to commence the Carl Engelskirger Comedy Hour at this time. And thank you for letting me speak today.
From Cleveland, Ohio, and China, we have Carl Engelskirger. Did I say it right? That'd be easier. He's a pilot, and he's the owner of Ike and Mike, and these are two of our favorite old racing planes, and they belong to Benny Howard as well. So he's restoring them, and I heard wonderful stories about how he came about getting them last night.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for risking life and limb to come out this treacherous morning. A little background on myself. I grew up in an airplane family. Dad flew. Mom was a flight attendant, American. My sister was a flight attendant. We've been around antique airplanes our entire life. My foray into this whole Mike and Ike era started when I was flying a trip in Washington, D.C. about 15 or 16 years ago. Ironically, about the same time I had met Doug, who was flying a very important historical airplane, the Tuskegee Airman P-51 Mustang Red Tail. And Doug doesn't remember this meeting, but I do. And it was, I was like, along the same trip, I was flipping through a airplane buy and sell magazine called Trade a Plane in a very dirty section called Warbirds. And I was beyond my price scope, but I was looking at a T6 Texan, which is a World War II trainer. And I find one in an area code very close to mine. So I call this gentleman up and I said, hello, I'm interested in your World War II airplane. And I said, is this the one that's been rotting away at Fremont for 25 years? He goes, that airplane's not rotting away. And he got really upset. He hung up the phone on me. So I called him back and I said, I think we had a bad connection. And he called me a dirty name and he said, no, I hung up on you because I don't appreciate your tone. I called him back again and he says, well, maybe you're not interested in my Warbird. What else do you have? Well, I have these airplanes called Mike and Ike. I'm like, nah, they're fakes. Hangs up on me again. So he says, I call him back again, and he's like, if you don't believe me, next time you get home from your trip, why don't you get in your car and you drive out to the Skyway Drive-In movie theater, and you can see the airplanes. I'm like, I get home, I call him up, and I said, I'd like to come see the airplanes. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we get in a car, and we drive 2 hours and 25 minutes to the middle of nowhere in Ohio. It's just south of a place called Fremont. And we enter the Skyway Drive-In movie theater, and lo and behold, here's Mike, which is the predecessor to Mr. Mulligan, so that's the DGA-4. And that chance conversation on the phone, chance visit, chance meeting with Joey Binder, the previous owner, led to a 2-year odyssey of trying to procure these airplanes. Joey Binder, a man larger than life, he was in the early onset of Alzheimer's. He could not remember what he had for breakfast, but he could tell you everything about the day he was standing there in September of 1935 when Mr. Mulligan showed up and won the Bendix race in the rain. He showed me a picture. He says, this is the photographer that pushed me out of the way. And there's the picture. I'm like, that's amazing. Joey was larger than life. He had owned a P-51 Mustang that had come from an heir of the Morton Salt Company. He owned a drive-in movie theater. He was, his family were rum runners during the Prohibition era. He had a bullet slug in his leg from the Purple Gang in Toledo. You can't make this stuff up. But and he had enough anecdotal evidence to prove that Joey Binder was the real deal. So long and the short of it, 2 years go by, and I call Joey every 3 weeks. Joey, want to buy the airplanes. Who are you? I'm Carl, the guy who wants the airplane. Yeah, call me next week. This goes on and on. Finally, one day out of the blue, Joey calls me up and says, Carl, bring me a suitcase of cash tomorrow. He gives me the amount of money, and he says, this is what it's going to cost. And I'm like, Joey, is that going to be an unmarked 20s? Because that's going to be a little hard to come up with overnight. Being the industrious young man I was at the time of, I don't know how old I was, I approached my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Would you consider funding me? I came up, no. So I was able to convince her to take a mortgage out on her home. I have a sister, but I'm the only son. I'm the only child, so it's okay. We go to the bank, we get a check for a largish sum of money, and I take it to Joey the next day, and I says, Joey, can I please have the airplanes, please? And he agreed. The very next day, we went and picked him up. Joey had been the custodian of these airplanes for roughly 45 to 50 years at that point. They had made two outings, I correct. In 1995, they were at Oshkosh, which is the big air venture function, commemorating air racing. And then one airplane was on display at the Crawford Museum in Cleveland. And that's it. Other than that, they'd fallen off the face of the earth. So we showed up with a U-Haul. I had my lawyer with me, because he's like American Express. We don't leave home without him. He's the only guy that got a speeding ticket on that trip after getting an ice cream cone, but that's a long story. We loaded these airplanes into a U-Haul truck and we drove them home. And the reality of what we had just accomplished started to sink in. As Doug pointed out, custodianship of these airplanes is a big thing. We're not owners. We are blessed with the opportunity to be able to be involved, to preserve, to create, to fly, to manage. Doug is doing a wonderful job with Mr. Mulligan. We hope to do the same thing with Mike and Ike. It's been an uphill battle for us, though. I purchased these airplanes in 2006. First child showed up in 2009, lost a job in 2009. Wife lost her job in 2009. The economy went away in 2009. And I was faced with a hard decision, and I made the decision to go to China. Non-conventional, but I ended up I still work for a company called Alibaba. I work for the person that started Alibaba, Mr. Jack Ma, and I've been with him for 10 years. Through Jack's generosity and his continued employment, we've been able to fund this project, which I'd be brutally honest is going to deny my children medical college scholarships because given a choice, I've earned mine, they can earn theirs. The project, once it got going, it was all about people. It was all about people coming together. Just like the Harold Neumann project, we started off throwing some feelers out, and like President Pen Pals, Elliot walked into my life, and I'm like, that's amazing. This guy is the only other geek in the world that is fascinated with antique airplane instruments. And then we started talking about Howards. And then I realized he's had access to all of this technical information, and I'd already built one airplane wing to replace a bad one on one of the racers, and he's like, I've got the data you need. Guess the wing I built was wrong. So we started from scratch. We're on second wing now. It's just been amazing. We've been 6 years into rebuilding and restoring an engine that is the only one in existence. The problem being one of none. We're unaware that we're unaware. We don't even know what we're missing. So this project has spanned the globe. We've had parts worked on in Germany. We've had parts made in Bangkok. We've been all over the country trying to save this thing, and we are, I think, 95 to 98% there. We're ready to go back together. No engine like this has run since 1938. It's the last of its kind, and it matches with Ike, which Harold owned, and we have the original propeller. It's all together. It's a complete package. The provenance is amazing. It's going to be a great project. Several times along the way, we faced several golden BBs that could have just shut down the whole project. And sheer dumb luck, perseverance, never give up is the spirit here. we're thrilled that we're going to have opportunity to access this. Elliot's told me when he glanced at the manuscript that there's fascinating anecdotes in there about flying these airplanes. We can't be more thrilled. What a great opportunity. It was a random phone call to Angie from an airport someplace around the world that put me in touch with Paula, which was another random phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning in China to Paula. That got this whole ball rolling. And then social media has taken over, and we're just very fortunate. So now, as this project grows, our project continues to move along. We look forward to the day we can bring Ike here to Gen Air and show it off, fly it. Elliot's going to fly the airplane. When Doug gets a little shorter, he's going to fly the airplane.
You lost me with Monasco.
No means yes in the airplane world. He's going. So, but yeah, no, it's just been it's been about the people. It's been about the experience. We just can't be thankful enough. It's and to have all of Harold's stuff here at one time. For Elliot and myself to have access to some of the technical data, the pictures, the photographic documentation that Paula has been able to come up with along with the family has saved our bacon several times. We, for 2 airplanes that were terribly photographed, there's certain images, there's certain aspects that are completely unknown. Fully 98% of the information that's in print about these airplanes is wholly inaccurate. We have righted a lot of historical wrongs along the way, and we've done that only because we have the actual artifact in our hand, and we're like, well, okay, so we're right, they're wrong. But again, thanks to Paula, the family, the pictures, Angie, it's a neat project. I hope 2-3 more years maybe we can get this juggernaut moving along and get in the air. And again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for inviting us. We appreciate it. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you,
What
Paula.
about Mike? There was Mike and Ike, right?
They look alike.
Do you have both?
I do. Mike's situation, I'll give you a little history on Mike. So Mike last flew in 1936. Interesting story on how Mike is still here and not still here. A gentleman named, Elliot, help me out, Joe Jacobson. Joe Jacobson was flying the Bendix race in 1936 from Cleveland to California. He was flying an airplane called the Northrop Gamma for a young industrialist named Garwood, which I believe is the same gentleman that was in the boat business. Someplace over the middle of America, this airplane literally blew up in flight, and young Joe found himself floating helplessly in space. He pulled his ripcord on his parachute, and he floated to Earth. And he said, well, being an industrial young man, I'm going to make my way to California, and I'm going to complete the races. This guy got on a train, on a plane, and he got himself all the way to Los Angeles in time to fly the races after getting blown out of an airplane. He's racing in 1936 at Los Angeles. He's landing in Mike, and a car pulls out in front of him on the runway. There's a great photographic sequence of the airplane tumbling down the runway into pieces. Not only did he get blown out of an airplane, he crashed the second one while landing in Los Angeles. That is the last time that Mike flew, and that would be around September 3rd or 4th, 1936. The airplane's never flown since. It was sold by Harold to a gentleman who sold it to another gentleman in Cleveland named Fred Rovner. Fred owned the airplanes. He ended up buying Mike and Ike. Fred Rovner was a flight instructor, a civilian flight instructor. He ended up dying on the last day of World War II in an airplane crash. How ironic. He never registered one airplane, the other one he did. Mike got put into the rafters and was stored, and it survived the war. The problem is the engine, and that's the one weak link to the equation here. They made about 7 of these Monasco engines. We have serial 6008. We're missing one. 6010 was the one for Mike. It ended up in a hangar in Columbus, Ohio during the Korean War. The 2 young kids that owned the airplane at the time were off flying for the military air transport system of the United States Air Force in the Korean War. The gentleman that owned the hangar, named Forrest Lane, said, "It's hangar cleaning day, boys." They took this engine and they pitched it in the garbage. So yes, I know, we all shed a tear. We shed a tear every day we think about this. So the engine for Mike is long gone. It's in a dumpster in Columbus, Ohio, leaving us with one. There's 2 other similar engines in existence. One's at RAF Hendon, which is the Royal Air Force Museum, which I've had the fortune to see. And the other one is in storage at the Smithsonian. We tried in vain. Elliot and I and a few other heavy hitter type people tried to convince the Smithsonian that our cause was better than their cause. But they feel that connection with their engine, which was the backup engine for a Charles Lindbergh airplane, was more significant, so we are without an engine. So if anybody has one sitting in their barn next to their Garwood boat, we'd love to have one. So anyway, Mike is there with no engine. It's complete. We're just trying to figure out which direction to go with it.
So it's restored without an engine?
It's unrestored without an engine.
Oh, okay.
What it is the test bed right now for restoring Ike, because there's stuff missing. Together they make one. Like me and Elliot, together we make one person. So anyway, yeah, that's the history of Mike. Ike flies. Mike, it would fit right here. GoFundMe. Thank you again for coming out. It was a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you. Hopefully in a couple of years we'll have the airplane here and we'll watch Elliot go fly it. Then Doug tried to get in it. Thank you again.
I really do think he should be a comedian. He missed his chance. Now I'd like to introduce a distinguished alumni of Geneseo High School 2021 Hall of Fame. And Jamie Reed graduated in 87?
85.
85. I knew my
Yeah.
daughter's 86. I knew
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
one
yeah,
way or
yeah.
the other. Okay. And she is the commissioner of the Chicago Department of Aviation. And we're really proud to have her here today and tell us about the Eiffel Tower. And it's really important when you find out how O'Hare International Airport started.
Okay, thanks. Come on up here. So while we were sitting there, and while you were talking about Mr. Mulligan, she asked, "Is that the plane?" And I said, "Yeah." And she has a question for you. Can you ask him the question? Ask him. She asked, "How's he fit in there?" So I said, we're going to have to ask him, because that is a good question to know how you fit in that plane. Okay, go sit down. I'll be right there in a minute. Well, good morning. It is such a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak a little bit about the contributions that Harold Neumann made to the aviation community. First, I'd just like to recognize a few folks. Obviously, my daughter Giselle is here with me today, and my husband Mike. We came in from Chicago last night. And Carmen Bodine, which is a very good friend of mine. Aviation is in the blood here, I think, or in the water in Geneseo. She works at the current Quad City Airport. And then we have with us Ben and Commissioner from the Quad City Airport as well. So I just want to thank you for coming today and helping us celebrate such a tremendous opportunity here. So I am Jamie Ree. I am the Commissioner for Chicago Department of Aviation, which is the department that runs both O'Hare and Midway airports. And in a normal year, 2019, we processed about 100 million passengers through O'Hare and Midway. So Harold Neumann would be very proud to know that and Mayor Daley, that the investment in O'Hare that they made back in the day was certainly with it. We are the most connected airport in the world. Only second to actually London Heathrow, but now have actually surpassed them given COVID. And then also boast of a geographic area in the middle of the United States that really promotes connectivity. So we're able to process people that are not only coming to Chicago to stay and visit and see our great city, but also that are connecting through to travel on, as well as a host of many foreign flag carriers in our international terminal that provide direct access to over 270 spots throughout the globe. So we're very excited about the origins of that one international flight that really made history. Like Mr. Neumann, of course, I am from Geneseo, and I both believe that we have a love of aviation. And again, I just think there must be something here in Geneseo. I remember driving my grandfather, who raised me here, worked for Ford Seed Company. And I remember seeing that airport out there and that runway, and I never dreamed in a million years that a little girl in Geneseo would be running the airports, and one of the busiest in the world. So it's really, truly an honor to serve. I have worked with the city of Chicago now for 28 years. I like to say that I've been kicked out of every city department at least once. Aviation 3 times, twice. This is my 3rd time back. I actually started my career career. I actually lived in Japan for a while and spoke Japanese and came back and before I went to law school, I started working for the city of Chicago and was a foreign language assistant for French, Spanish, and Japanese back in the day, and then went back again as the general counsel in 2004 and spent another 5 years. Got kicked out again and went and worked directly for Mayor Daley, this is going to come full circle. Worked for Mayor Daley and then subsequently Mayor Emanuel and now Mayor Lightfoot. Served 10 years as the Chief Procurement Officer and then landed back in O'Hare, or at the Aviation Department at the end of 2018. So as we gather today here to celebrate Mr. Neumann's contributions and achievements, I'd like to highlight the important role that he actually played in O'Hare's history. On August 8, 1958, the first commercial international nonstop flight arrived in Chicago O'Hare from Paris, France, and Mr. Neumann was the captain. Chicago's Collector of Customs, Frank Pesca, at the time, was quoted as saying at the opening ceremony that this will be one of the great international crossroads, just as it has been a great domestic arterial center. This monumental flight originated in Rome and actually stopped in Milan and then Paris before making the 16-hour, 20-minute flight to Chicago. When he landed, Mr. Neumann actually joked that he would have made it an hour and a half early, but he quoted, didn't want to upset the timing of the ceremony. So not surprising given his exceptional flight racing career. So instead of upsetting the timing of the ceremony, the flight and crew, 80 passengers, landed 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Mr. Neumann made Chicago history with this inaugural flight, 4,000 miles in distance in 1958. And by the end of 1958, over 22,000 international passengers had already traveled through O'Hare. As a gift to commemorate the occasion, Mr. Neumann presented a replica of the Eiffel Tower to Mayor Richard J. Daley, who declared that it had been a vision, now that the great future for this truly international terminal with its connection to all the older capitals in Europe. The tower has spent the past years at the University of Illinois at Chicago, but now the replica will be here on display at the Aviation Pioneer exhibit from the university. Since Mr. Neumann's inaugural flight in 1958, much has changed O'Hare. In 1958, O'Hare offered 5 runways. Now with the completion of the O'Hare Modernization Program, which was the runway reconfiguration, taking an old, antiquated parallel runways and turning them into a complete modern parallel. We have 6 parallel and 2 crosswinds now, and boast the most runways in the entire country. But we've had 16 years of continuous runway construction at O'Hare, and we've relocated several runways. We built 4 new ones, relocated 2 other ones, built 2 brand new air traffic control towers, and I happened to be there, which was very exciting at the very beginning in 2008 when we commissioned our first northern runway, 9 left, 27 right. It was the first runway that O'Hare had commissioned in about 40 years. And we're now at the tail end. Last year during COVID, we actually commissioned the last full build runway, 9 center, 27 right, and are doing the current extension, which will then complete all of the runways, and we're done with runways. But like Daniel Burnham said, make no small plans. So in 2018, we entered into an $8.5 billion expansion program over the next 10 years. And currently, if you go to O'Hare, you'll see on the international terminal, Terminal 5, that was opened in 1993. We're adding 10 new gates to that terminal right now and have structural steel being erected, and it's quite fascinating to watch it. We are also in design on a new global terminal. Terminal 2, which is one of our oldest terminals at O'Hare, was commissioned in 1956, and it was dedicated by the then John F. Kennedy, came to O'Hare with Mayor Daley and actually commissioned that terminal building. We will be building a new global terminal, which we're very excited about, as well as 2 satellite concourses actually moving to the west of O'Hare. So we're going to continue to make progress there over the next 10 to 15 years. And just by reconfiguring our airfield, for those that you may have flown through O'Hare, it is famous for being delayed, right? That was what it was known for a lot of years, and which is why Mayor Daley finally said, listen, and this was my Mayor Daley, Richard M. Daley, said, listen, if you're going to control the amount of flights that are coming in and out of O'Hare, I'm just going to have to fix something. So he embarked upon, at the time, a $3 billion expansion on the runway. And since then, we've seen the reduction of delays at about 64%. 100% system impact delays. So when Norman Mineta, he was Secretary of Transportation, came to O'Hare to give us some money back in 2008, he literally said, when O'Hare sneezes, the entire NAS, or the National Aviation System, catches a cold. And all the roads pass through O'Hare. So we've actually fixed that problem, and we're now on to our terminals. And while we're focused on O'Hare's future, we love to reminisce about our roots and the pilots who helped us get where we are now. And it's hard to imagine a 16-year nonstop flight to Paris now. But as we look back, all that Mr. Neumann accomplished, it has been truly, truly remarkable. I'd like to thank Paula and Angie, you guys are absolutely amazing, and all of the panelists here today that and all the folks that went into actually bringing this project to fruition. You know, it was real strange how I got involved. Again, coming from Geneseo, I was in my office on a Saturday last year, about a year ago, I think, when I received in the mail, I was going through some routine mail, and I opened up a brochure and saw the Howard Neumann project, and I thought, oh, what is this? And I started reading through it, and I cannot tell you the shock, the utter shock that I saw when he was from Geneseo, and it made me just feel so proud. So I could not wait to call Paula and say, are you kidding me? I just got this. And it literally, the letter was not even addressed to me. It was just, you know, whoever the airport director would happen to be. So the chance that that would be me was just absolutely, I think, meant to be. And then when we started talking, she told me about this statue. She said, you know, there's this picture that was in the paper back in the day where Mr. Neumann actually gave Richard J. Daley a replica of the Eiffel Tower. And she said, you don't think that there's any way you could find that, would you? And I said, oh my gosh, I don't know. Well, I've been in the city quite a few years. Let me see, I'm pretty resourceful. So I started looking around. We went to the Municipal Reference Library. We went to the different places that I knew to look. And then I was like, why am I even screwing around? Let me just do what I do best. And I called Mayor Daley and I said, Mayor, where would this be? And have you ever seen this? And he was like, no, I don't know. And then he said, but you know, UIC has a lot of dad stuff. And so you may want to go over there and check. And sure enough, buried down in the deep, you know, in the basement somewhere we found this truly, truly relic. And we were like, we have to do something. So I was really honored to be able to bring it here today, and so that everyone can see and experience that bit of history that happened. So I'd like to thank the entire board as well for having me here today to honor a fellow Geneseoan and such an inspiring figure in aviation history. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Just a couple more things. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today on this rainy day when we would have liked sunshine, but we had our sunshine up here, so that made it extra special. I have one more story. When I was a little girl, my dad was a bookkeeper for Sandy's dad, and he must have told him about Harold Neumann because we would go out north of town and west of town, and we go out and look at Harold's hangar. And when I was a little girl, and I said to my dad, that's really stupid. Why does he have a T hangar? How do you get the plane in it? And he said, you push it, you back it in. And I said, well, why would you do that? And he said, how many times, Angie, have you seen a plane flying in reverse? Short, blonde, whatever. But I just want to thank everybody, and we have cinnamon rolls to take and go with you. I forgot to thank one person that I should thank, and that was my husband. I left him off the list, not on purpose. But he was able to put some of the the trophies of Harold Neumann's back together, and one of them we thought would never get back together. That is, so I'm really proud, and I should have said thank you. He's been putting up with me for the last few weeks working on this. I will tell you that Sandy, Doris, Ann, and I had lunch about 22 years ago at Victorian Manor, and this is how it started. His uniform was here, some of his trophies, some of his, the Smithsonian picture, a lot of these things. We had a small exhibit, and I'm very, very proud today to say I'm glad we finally have this done. And it's my grand hurrah, and it's been a pleasure to meet everybody and learn more about it. And then I'm going to turn it over to Paula because she has a couple more things to share with you. And we do hope that we'll be able to get to the airport by 1 o'clock this afternoon and see the planes, whether they get to fly or not.
we're so thankful that she is staying with this project. You are a dear friend and part of the family now. Okay, so the book, it has been announced that we're going to be able to copy and sell the book for, when you said no profit, it was to the big box stores. We're going to use it for getting, working on the statue, as well as bringing in more of his, oh, I can't think of it.
Artifacts?
Thank you, thank you.
And what I meant was no profit to a
Big-
business
Big box
organization.
store. So we're going to today go ahead and do some pre-sales. If you order the book today, they're going to be $45. Otherwise, after today, they will go up to $55. And all the proceeds will go towards it. And let me tell you, since I have met these two gentlemen, I have been digging through. They'll ask me a question, and so will other pilots. Why was the gas tank, what was the deal with the gas tank in Mr. Mulligan? And I'll dig and find exactly what Harold wrote about that gas tank and give that information, and that they had never heard that before. So this book is amazing what he has put down in writing. So I think it will be detrimental to people that are putting the planes back together. So anyway, it will be for sale down there. Sharon, I believe, has some forms to fill out. So thank you again for coming.